Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. So I've come on today to, I've been doing some stitching of the Roxy's Journal Stitchery Project 8, and so the first layer went, I used a table cover that was badly stained, and then I've started to add in pieces on the top, and I'm going to cover the whole of the base fabric with these pieces, and then add more pieces as I go along of sort of more interesting and colourful pieces. So the second layer is mostly creams and light sort of white and beiges, so sort of less of white but more of creams and beiges in colour, and they're cotton. The one that you have in front of me is a doily or a tray cloth of some sort, but I've used all sorts of different bits of fabric as I'm showing you here, including lace and what have you. So the second layer, as I said, it's around about 80% finished now, and I will show you that in an image at the end of this video. But as I'm slow stitching, I thought to myself, well, instead of doing the usual chat, I've muted myself and I've decided I'm going to do a book reading instead, because it seemed that some of you enjoyed it when I did it previously. So the book that I've chosen today is called The Wild Remedy, How Nature Mends Us by Emma Mitchell. So this is in diary form over a 12-month period, and it starts in October. However, I'm going to skip ahead to August because I feel that, that would be relevant to our time right now. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this little reading. I will stop, intermittently throughout just to talk about what I'm doing in the video as well. So maybe play some music. I'll see how I get on. Anyway, so just as I said, this chapter is August, and it's part of the Wild Remedy book. So the book itself is a journey, I guess, over a year, and the author struggles with depression, and it's her describing her walks and her trips into nature and what she sees, what she feels, and all of those other sort of senses, and how it helps to heal her symptoms. And it's a wonderful book. There are photographs, and there is also some sweet little drawings that she did. It's just her descriptive use of descriptive language is just beautiful, very evocative, and I just love it. So, and there's lots of personal stuff in there as well. So anyway, I'll make a start. So as I said, chapter 8 and, August, and I'll make a start. So for 8 consecutive years of my childhood, from the age of 4, our family holidays were spent on the coast of Pembrokeshire in West Wales. The journey there from Liverpool took 6 hours or more, and it seemed to me to be one of the furthest flung places on earth. Those fortnights on the Welsh coast were one of the times of the year when the family was relaxed and happy, which made them immensely precious. To my eyes, Pembrokeshire was a transformative wonderland where everything was good. We were allowed to stay up late and go on trips to the beach after dinner. I have memories of shops being open until dusk. People could buy things, even in the evening. This seemed terribly exotic to me, the sort of thing that happened in Spain or America. The drive back to our bed and breakfast after such night adventures was one of the best parts of these holidays. From the car window we would see wildlife. Bats, rabbits, flurries of moths, owls, and once a badger, all going about their business. I'm not sure whether any other members of the family notice these creatures, but I always sat up as tall as I could in the back seat, craning my neck, trying to catch a glimpse of them in their night world. These first sightings of nocturnal wildlife in Wales captivated me and always prevented the dark from holding much fear. Even now, if I cannot sleep, I know that the wood behind our cottage is a sort of busy, bosky city at night, and I find this a very comforting thought. The call of an owl can help to banish even the most severe anxiety, the roaring, nerve-searing kind that seems to bubble up at 3 a.m. The seas off the coast of Pembrokeshire are warmed by the Gulf Stream, and as a result, the biodiversity along the rocky shoreline of this part of Britain is some of the richest in the UK. In 1991, I went on a college field trip to Dale Fort on St Anne's Head near Milford Haven, and was astonished by the range of species that we found. Large brown sea slugs called sea hares, little orange sponges, brittle stars, and even a worm pipefish, a cousin of seahorses with a long thin body, lurking beneath some seaweed on a rock pool like a living shoelace. When I was small, I didn't know much about maritime wildlife, but I knew that I could find very interesting things in rock pools, things that darted, scuttled and snailed about, that I could catch in my net if I was careful, and they'd continue to dart, scuttle and snail about in my bucket. When I was 7, I had been allowed to stay up to watch Life on Earth when it was first shown on BBC One. I remember underwater footage of whales, dolphins and shoals of vivid fish on coral reefs. The miniature collections of creatures I found in Pembrokeshire rock pools and placed just for a short time in my seaside bucket were just as fascinating to me as the formidable marine creatures I'd seen on the television. One summer, it may have been 1979 or 1980, I found a pebble with an interesting pattern on it, like several tiny sharp volcanoes. It matched the pattern I had seen on the boulders nearby and I liked it, so I added it to my bucket. As I watched the shrimps and crab I had caught scuttle about in this tiny rock pool I had made, there was another very small movement and the pebble seemed to shimmer a little. I remember peering more closely, wondering if it was an illusion caused by the movement of water. Then I saw the top of one of the little volcanoes open like a trapdoor, and tiny fringe of pinkish tentacles emerge like a minuscule hand. It began to claw at the water above it, and each time it did, so the row of tentacles disappeared inside the trapdoor. It seemed to me that something similar to the footage from Life on Earth had just taken place right in front of me as I squatted on the sand peering into a pint or so of seawater. The only other time I had experienced exhilaration like it was on a twister at the fun fair. I remember thinking that what I was seeing was momentous, that tiny and wonderful things were taking place in my bucket, and that surely this was so astounding that it could be on the news. When I found out that the strange little being I had seen was a common variety of barnacle, that it had been feeding on plankton in the seawater, and that there were hundreds of millions of them living on the rocky beaches of Pembrokeshire, it did nothing to dim my awe. I had witnessed a fascinating creature behaving as it would have done were I not there. It was a glimpse of nature, a scrap of wildness in a bright plastic bucket. It had made me feel euphoric and I was hungry for more. I was happiest when I was in Pembrokeshire. The range of wildlife I encountered there as a child and the rare freedom I had to explore the beaches during those annual holidays meant that I have always associated that part of UK with a contentment and intense nature-based wonder. As August now begins, I realise that I haven't been by the sea since March, when I saw the murmuration at Mends. Much as I love the Suffolk and Norfolk coastlines near to our cottage, for me there is a siren call from the beaches of the southwest Wales, Broadhaven, Marlo's, Saundersfoot Dale, Bosherton. Even their names are bewitching. I'm longing to see small things dashing about in rock pools and to search for treasure along the Strand line. I'm longing for that sigh of mental relief that comes when I am by the sea, and in and in particular the coast of Pembrokeshire. Recovery from such a severe bout of depression can be a drawn-out process for mind and body. I've been tired since the spring and still don't feel fully well, so I decided to head west. So I'm going to play some music now, and I'll intersperse my readings with music as I did in one of my previous videos, and I hope you enjoy. I time my journey so that I arrive several hours before sunset. I'm determined to visit a beach on my first evening in Pembrokeshire, and the owners of the tiny converted cowshed I am staying in point me in the direction of Wiseman's Bridge Beach, a place we never visited during my childhood holidays. I set out towards the coast, and within a few minutes I become aware of the distinctive raised hedgerows that line many of the roads in this part of Wales, and that I vividly remember from childhood summers. At this time of year they are peppered with patches of yellow toadflax, white yarrow and mauve scabious. After I've been driving for 10 minutes or so, the road begins to snake downwards towards the coast. My anticipation builds. I'm about to walk on the shore. I feel childishly giddy, and my mood scuds upward like a kite. I park just a metre or two from the edge of the beach, and the sea is there in front of me. The sea. I walk onto the beach and discover a pavement of beautiful flattish pink and grey pebbles. They have been rounded by the waves and pressed into the sand by the passage of thousands of feet walking towards the shore. They are strewn here and there with dried seaweed, and I stand for some minutes simply looking down at them. When I spend time on a beach, I experience a covetous feeling, and I want to possess the pebbles and shells and sand and small creatures that live there. Beaches cause such a dramatic and welcome shift in my brain chemistry that I long to take scraps of them home as talismans against the difficult days that are bound to come. It is a more potent version of the botanical covetousness I experienced in the village wood in November, when I felt as acquisitive towards the sloes, haws and bright leaves trimming the branches as I am towards precious semi-stones or skeins of soft yarn. This is the dopamine of beachcombing. I want to own these pebbles, line our cottage with them, arrange them into a patchwork, tailor them into a stony suit and walk around wearing them. I would look like a sort of pebbly armadillo, and I think it would be the most beautiful outfit of all. I content myself with taking a photograph. As I walk towards the sea, my feet cross from pebbles to sand, and the kite of my feelings climbs higher. I see a group of pools to my right, so I make my way towards them and clamber onto rocks to see what I can find there, as I did so many times as a child. The first small rock pool I come across is no larger than a bath mat. It's lined with seaweed, and immediately I see dark red beetlet anemones attached to its gently sloping rocky walls, lying in wait for plankton to drift past their outstretched tentacles. Where the beetlets are attached above the waterline, they have retracted their tentacles and look like giant jelly sweets whose sugar coating has been dissolved by the sea. I have neither bucket nor net with me, so I squat as I did when I was small and peer into the pool. There are several shrimps chasing about. They are the colour of the sand itself and subtly speckled. When they are still, they become invisible, almost invisible, and I wonder at the evolution of this perfect camouflage. There is a large pebble on the floor of the pool, and I shift it carefully. To my delight, 3 crabs scuttle away, causing the shrimps to dart beneath the seaweed in alarm. carapace of the smallest crab, the size of a peanut, is covered in a bold black and white pattern. It is a juvenile crab, shore crab, the kind I used to seek out for my bucket worlds. Another of the crabs, an adult shore crab, settles into the sandy bottom of the pool and begins to make a rowing movement with its legs to submerge itself, leaving only its eyes and mouth parts protruding. I store these seemingly mundane happenings in a mental cupboard that I'll open on days when depression lurks. I'm keen for a paddle in the sea, so I shift position and stand up, and as I do so, a pattern-seeking part of my brain lights up briefly as I glance at a crevice between two rocks. What had I seen? Some barnacles, the spiral of a whelk. I lower myself again and look carefully. Clamped to the rock is a chiton. It is a small mollusk with 8 overlapping shell plates and looks like a legless seaside woodlouse, a tiny fragment of alligator skin. The only other time I've seen a chiton is on my college field trip to Pembrokeshire, and to discover one again 27 years later has a pleasing neatness to it. The earliest fossil chiton is to be found is 400 million years old, so this is a modern member of a truly ancient family of animals. I leave my sandals on a rock, roll up the legs of my jeans and paddle in the shallows for some time. Humans are drawn to water, both fresh and salt, as it would have aided our survival. But there are more benefits than simply food and hydration. The marine biologist Wallace Nichols believes that standing on the shore and looking out to sea, or watching a river as it slips by, gives our eyes and brains a break from visual stimuli. It is a holiday for the brain, a rest from the frenetic and incessant input we receive in modern life, a sort of maritime meditation. I certainly feel this as I stand there, allowing the water to wash around my feet. As the waves advance and recede, my mind drifts into a quiet stasis that feels similar to when I am crocheting or drawing. Mental din recedes and dark thoughts evaporate. I understand why the seaside was prescribed for so many ailing Victorians. The sun is beginning to set, the light on the beach becomes golden, and as often happens when I am immersed in nature, I realise I have forgotten to eat. I make my way back to the car, but peep into one last rock pool on my way up to the beach. Next to the pool is a cluster of large pinkish barnacles that must have become detached. I place them in the water. I have little hope of them emerging, as the bases of several are broken and jagged, where they have come away from boat or rock. 2 of them have holes where their trapdoors should have been, and I suspect that this cluster may be dead. But I watch and wait just in case. One of the remaining trapdoors seems to darken. It opens slightly and the barnacle begins to feed. I'm reliving an encounter that I first experienced more than 35 years ago. As I watch this small creature have a meal, I am filled with gratitude for nature's ability to mend my mind. Okay, so I said I would come on and just let you know what I'm doing here as well. I hope you're enjoying it so far. This is and just finishing off the stitching of 2 more pieces, I think, left to stitch on, and then I'll be finished with the base stitching around, and I'll be making a start on the decorative stitching. So I hope you're enjoying it so far. If you have any projects that you'd like to share, whatever it is you're working on in the community posts, then please do feel free to do so. I hope you're enjoying the reading and the music and also the stitching, of course. So yeah, and I'll be following up with another video very soon where I'm doing more decorative stitching. So I'll leave this here and finish off with the rest of the reading. The next day I drive to Marlo's beach. I remember these sands being punctuated with impressively huge rocks, and then I saw a little fish lurking in a crevice in one of them, away from many rock pools, yet alive and rather wriggly when I touched it gently with some seaweed. I remember wondering at this fish. How could it survive away from water? On my college field trip, I learned that it was a blenny, also known as a shanny or sea frog. Providing their skin remains moist, these intrepid fish can escape the low oxygen levels of rock pools by wedging themselves into small rocky openings as the tide recedes, spending several hours there, safe and still until the tide rises again and they can swim away to feed. I'm curious to know whether blennies still live at Marlo's. In the 90s, there was at least one significant oil spill from the tankers docking at Milford Haven. Perhaps this habitat no longer supports the ecological diversity that it did when I was young. There is a mile or so walk from the car park to Marlo's beach across fields and down steep winding paths to the shore. As I walk, I notice that the landscape seems less parched here in Pembrokeshire than it does at home in the fens. It is lush and verdant, as though we had not had 2 months of scorching temperatures. Perhaps the nearby Preseli Hills have triggered more rainfall here than in eastern England. It is a relief to my senses to see so many shades of green after the desiccated grasses of Cambridgeshire. As I approach the beach, I turn a corner in the path and my eyes are met with a view that I haven't seen in over 3 decades. I'm overwhelmed by memory and emotion. The fragrant smell of dry coastal grassland, the subtle pink of thrift flowers on a cliff, the movement of tiny fish, seawater trapped in rocks pitted and hollowed out by waves, the tang of drying seaweed, a tiny cushion star held reverently in my palm as though it were an emerald. Seeking out repetition of the piercing joy of my first encounters with nature, experienced here at Marlo's and in my granddad's garden, has helped me to keep on living. This place holds enormous meaning for me. The rocks at Marlo's are like a geological hallucination. The strata have been shifted through 90 degrees by the earth's heave, and they undulate wildly. Enormous sea-worn chunks of this layered stone erupt from the sand like the bodies of prehistoric reptiles. The rocks are encrusted with a chainmail of barnacles, and the pools that form in and around them are teeming with life. Some are several metres tall. All are a deep red with stripes of mustard and grey and are worn smooth by a millennia of waves and scouring sands. There are crevices along them where some of the upended strata have been eroded more quickly. Here long shallow pools form, full of candy-striped winkles, beadlet anemones and intricate barnacle crust, and complex interconnected food webs of algae, plankton, crustaceans and fish. The rocks rise sharply from the sand, causing eddies at their bases, resulting in deep rock pools that can hold much more oxygen while the tide is out than a shallow pool a few centimetres deep. I am examining a deep fissure in one of the rocks as I walk around it and inadvertently step into one of these pools. The sand falls away steeply at its edge and I nearly stumble. As I steady myself, I peer into it. Immediately adjacent to the rock, the water is deep enough to have a blue tinge, and the range of life here is remarkable. I can see the darting movements of fish around 5 or 6 inches long, at least 3 varieties of seaweed, small shoals of shrimps in the shallows, and the pool's rocky edge is studded with innumerable whelks and winkles. Suddenly a tiny place, the size of a 50p piece, swims out across the pool just beneath the surface. Like the shrimps in these rock pools, it is the exact colour of sand, with subtle pale spots on its skin. A muscular sine wave crosses and recrosses its body, propelling it gracefully through the water. I've never seen a flatfish in a rock pool before, and I gasp with excitement. It glides towards the edge of the pool and settles on the sand, shivering its body slightly to cause a cloud of grains to rise around it and fall onto its back. It is instantly invisible. I've looked into several crevices in the rocks, hoping to see a blenny, but had spotted nothing but anemones and limpets lurking there. I'm on the verge of giving up and returning to the car. As I start to make my way back down the path to the beach, I pass one of the largest rocks. There is a deep but very narrow gorge in it where a softer geological layer has been worn away by endless tides. I peep in. A small, frog-like face peers balefully back at me. A blenny. I pick up a piece of seaweed as I did when I was small and move it gently towards the fish. To my astonishment, it bites violently at the frond of weed, making a loud snapping sound with its jaws, which are designed to crunch barnacles off rocks. I recoil, thrilled by this little creature's audacity. My encounter with both the feeding barnacle and this little fish hiding in a hole in a rock have echoed my childhood experiences in Pembrokeshire and reassured me that the habitats on these shores are as rich with wildlife as they were in the late 1970s. My trip to the beaches of West Wales has been curative. It has left me feeling well for the first time since last autumn. Okay, so we've come to the end of August, and I thought it might be quite nice to carry on into September while I finish stitching, and then I can hopefully show you a photograph of the whole piece. It's so large, it would be difficult for me to, show you it from a table. It would have to be looking down upon the whole thing. So I'll try and do that anyway, or maybe I'll take a short video going over it while it's on the floor or something. But let's just get into the book again. I'll finish this book reading while the video is still playing. So we're now into September, and September starts with blackberries ripen and swallows prepare to leave. The heat wave is over. It was broken by storms and torrential rain in late August, and the countryside has been gently returning to green. Showers have revived the cutting flowers I sowed in April and May, and they have begun to bloom again. I'm sitting on a newly built step in our garden, and I'm surrounded by bright spots of colour. Oranges and yellows from marigolds, pinks from cosmos, blues from borage and cornflowers, and the ethereal yellow umbels of fennel. The searing temperatures of June, July and August have been replaced by a gentle warmth, and the light has begun to soften and become golden as we move towards autumn. Over the last months, while my recovery has continued and I've been writing this book, I have come into the garden for a few minutes most days. It is human-made, this place. We have transformed a long, narrow, steeply sloping strip of land into 4 levels of brick, wood, turf and soil. Yet there is wildness here. A family of bank voles has built a network of burrows next to the small shed that houses the boiler. The adult voles go out to forage each day for themselves and for their young. A week or 2 ago, I looked out of the living room window to see one of them shinning up one of our tomato plants as though it were a tree, to pilfer the ripe fruit. My youngest daughter had been wondering why the choicest tomatoes kept disappearing. A juvenile toad regularly pees at the back door where there is a damp patch of ground, and several mason bees have made their nest in the drilled logs we added to the wall that was built a few months ago. Small bird stories unfold in the garden each day. The rage of the resident male blackbird towards all corvids and starlings, the affable flocks of goldfinches and long-tailed tits that visit the bird feeders, the dunnock that creeps beneath the plants, and the wren that lurks and feeds among the ivy that forms our boundary with next door. Innumerable bees, butterflies, hoverflies, ladybirds, and less showy insects live in and visit these few 10 square metres of garden. I let all seedlings that germinate in our patch have their chance that I edit later. Many may think the garden is messy in places, but I have gained numerous free plants this way. Seeds travel here on the wind, in the digestive tracts of birds and small mammals, and they stow away in the plant pots from car boot sales and roadside honesty stalls. My method is to stop weeding for weeks and sometimes months on end, and then remove some of the nettles, most of the thistles, and as much bindweed and ground elder as I can manage. Nature seems to relish my approach. I have unwittingly provided habitats for a wide range of species by letting a botanical medley develop. Watching the behaviour and interactions of inhabitants of our garden has been a source of solace for me in recent months. I am living proof of the research undertaken by the University of Exeter, showing that seeing plants, trees and watching wildlife can help to lift depression. There is no doubt that spending time in a wild landscape benefits the mind, but simply looking at wild happenings through your kitchen window will help if depression has you in its steely grip. As I sit with a cup of tea, I can hear the chatter of swallows as they embroider the sky with their flight lines high above my head. There is a comforting familiar whistling babble from goldfinches in the crabapple tree, and a soporific cooing from a collared dove in the hedge. Then a thin, sharp, undulating call pierces the air in the garden. It sounds like a wren, yet it is far quieter, faltering. I hold my breath as I listen. The wren's characteristic trill is there among the cacophony of notes. Then the song trails off. I'm puzzled. A wren's song in the breeding season is strident, confident, and surprisingly loud given the bird's size. Most birds cease their songs in July, once their broods have fledged. Earlier in the year, they would have been expending energy in proclaiming their territories or advertising to mates, but in late summer these are not priorities. Instead, they molt their feathers and hide in foliage and hedges. Gardens and countryside can seem very quiet in late summer as many birds are silent, and some will not begin to sing again until the following February or March when the breeding season begins. What I'm hearing now is what's called a sub-song, sometimes believed to be a kind of practice song. It could even be one of this year's juveniles testing out his tweeting prowess. This sound is all the more bewitching for its imperfection, the near silence of the surrounding countryside, and the thought that this could be one of the first times this bird has ever uttered a note. Until I began to discover bee orchids in our village wood, my knowledge of this group of plants was scant. These small exotic-seeming flowers growing so close to our cottage inspired me to find out more about what is perhaps the most captivating family of wild flowers growing in the UK. I learned that there were tall lizard orchids growing on the edge of Newmarket Racecourse, speckled with patterns of reptile skin and smelling rather rankly of goats. I visited the early purple orchids that open in April and grow in the glades of Bradfield Woods. I read about the common spotted orchid and how it can confound botanists by crossing with the marsh orchid, and I gazed at pictures of the ethereal green tway blades that lurk in ancient woodlands. I had always assumed that the flowering season of British orchids was confined to the middle of the year, that once the last of the summer flowering species faded on the Hebrides, orchids would not appear in the botanical calendar again until the early purples opened the following spring. This year I have learned that there is a summer straggler, an orchid species that begins to bloom in late August. Like many of the species I saw at Rose End Meadows in June, autumn lady's tresses grows in calcareous grassland habitats that have not been treated with fertilisers. It needs the biodiversity of microflora and fungi that comes from untouched soil in order to flourish. As with several of the species or habitats that I have sought this year, I learned of its existence from Twitter and set about finding the flowering site near our cottage. My friend Isabella and I decided to head to a small nature reserve in Bedfordshire called Knocking Hoe. There were no signs to direct us to the reserve. Finding it becomes a test of our ability to stitch together several sets of vague directions, fragments of information from Google Maps, and accounts from locals of a bun-shaped hill. We start down a track marked private road, and after walking half a mile or so we reach a farm and are informed that we are trespassing. I confess I became secretly gleeful at this point. We are being told off for orchid hunting. It seemed like something that might have happened in the 19th century. I apologise to the farmer, assure him that we wish no harm to its land, and declare that we will find another way back from the reserve. We emerge from behind a barn, and there is in front of us a bun-shaped hill. There are still no signs, but we feel this must be the place, so we press on and head towards a gate at the base of the hill. In the field beyond are cows. Isabella is not keen on ruminants, especially when they gallop across fields and loom behind stiles. So we find a path that arcs widely to our right and follows a ridge of the land that meets the crest of the hill. Along the edge of the path there are still points of colour from late summer wildflowers. Devil's bit scabious, clustered bellflower, agrimony, and the tiny white lobelia-like flowers of eyebright. As we climb the ridge, beautiful views open up across the county. The sky has a pearly opalescence in places, but most of it is steely grey. I worry it might rain. We reach the summit and there is a sign confirming we are at Knocking Hoe. We pass through the gate and follow a path across the hill. The land falls away steeply to our left. Optimistically, I thought that the autumn lady's tresses would be easy to find and might be visible among the grasses as soon as we entered the reserve. We continue walking and I leave the path several times to search for this elusive flower, but find only wild roses with an occasional robin's pincushion, harebells and patches of Breckland thyme. As lovely as these plants are, we're beginning to feel frustrated at the dearth of orchids. The sky is darkening and we feel the first raindrops. I'm concerned that we're on a floral wild goose chase, are stuck at the top of a hill with only one coat in dingy weather and are now 2 miles from where we parked. We reach an electric fence with a sort of handmade rustic style set in it. In the steeply sloping field beyond, several tens of small red flags had been pushed into the ground. I wonder if these mark the positions of the orchids, and we venture into the field to find out. When Autumn Lady's tresses first appeared on my Twitter feed, there was no way of telling its size, and I assumed it was as tall and showy as a bee orchid. I approached the nearest red flag carefully, as the incline in this field means that I struggle to keep a foothold as I climb down, even in sturdy boots. My eyes detect a pattern of pale dots very close to the ground and next to the flag. I drop down to examine the pattern more closely and find an exquisite string of very tiny white orchid flowers, just 5 millimetres in diameter, spiralling around a stem that is the pale bluish grey of an olive leaf. The foliage is covered in a down of very fine hairs that make it look as though it is covered in frost. This specimen of Autumn Lady's tresses is no more than 8 centimetres high. I had no idea orchids could be this small. This species is relatively rare in the UK as it requires untreated calcareous grassland in which to grow, and such sites are now scarce. I crouch even closer to the ground to take a picture of this specimen and its neighbour a few metres away, and can just about detect the coconut scent it produces. I turn to talk to Isabella further up the slope and see another floral helix, even smaller than the first, that has not been marked with a flag. I've discovered an unseen orchid on this hill. Okay, I'm going to leave it here because there are a few more pages left in the book, and it might be that you would like to discover that yourself. I do recommend it. It's called The Wild Remedy, How Nature Mends Us by Emma Mitchell, and I'll put the details in the description. So I hope you enjoyed the reading and also the music, and of course the stitching. This project, it's just at the beginning. I've got a lot of work to do, so there will be many more, I've no doubt, videos showing you the next stage and what have you, and following the prompts. So I hope you enjoyed it, and there are 2 important topics, the nature and mental health, and how nature can heal us. It certainly does. I can attest to that. So, just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Welcome to any new subscribers. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps my channel. Bye for now, everyone. Take care.